Hello, today's Bible study comes from First Timothy chapter 6, and we're just going to do verse 1, and we'll do the same with verse 2, mainly because there's a lot of information in the one verse. But First Timothy chapter 6, verse 1 reads as follows: All who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of respect so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Now, first thing I got to tell you, Paul did not condone slavery. This was not what he was saying. And Paul even tells you when he starts off that slavery is a yoke. There's a yoke of slavery. And all who are under this yoke of slavery, no matter what you're going through, is what he's saying, consider their master still full of respect. We still should be Christ-like, is what he's saying here. We think he was condoning slavery, but no, he was not condoning slavery. He was actually condoning the actions of a disciple of God. And the yoke of slavery is like any other yoke. It doesn't take us out of the way we are supposed to be. And yes, slavery is brutal. Slavery is bringing things that it shouldn't be. And even back at that time, there was a different form of slavery. But to be under someone is still difficult. And Paul says, even under this yoke, show respect to the master, because there was no need to be disrespectful and act unchristlike. So he wasn't acknowledging that he approved of the institution of slavery, but he wanted God to be given the glory, and no matter what our circumstances were. And this was a circumstance, this was a yoke, a burden on us. And Paul says that. And this can be in anything that we do, even today, with our bosses at work, with somebody that we work for or do things for. It tells you we should be expecting to do as God would have us do. And it tells you that. And it tells you to obey these people in all things your masters have told you to do according to the flesh. And this isn't to please man, but it's an action of obedience from the Lord, because we still want to be those vessels of love, those images of Christ. If we even had a boss, a owner, whatever you may be under, that saw how good God was to you, even with this yoke on your back, how amazing would that be? It's not like I'm sitting here saying I want to be in slavery, because understand, I don't want to be, but we are. Don't fool yourself. And Paul is just telling them, be aware that even with a yoke, a burden, that does not take you away from being a child of God. It does not mean that we fall into the actions that would not be Christ-like. And he says it right there, so that the name of God and his doctrine may not be blasphemed. Because people going to look at us in these situations. How did that disciple handle this? How did that disciple walk through this situation? Did that disciple go against everything they stated, the doctrine of the Lord, the work of God, the work of Christ, and say, you know what, I'm going to do it my way? Or did they take the time and say, you know what, Jesus had a yoke, and he still did it his Father's way? And that's what Paul is telling them. It is not about slavery. It is not a condoning of slavery. It is truly a condoning of being Christ-like, no matter what the circumstances. Amen.